how does the farmer make more money? How do we create a company that makes money? And the only way it really works is if other people make money along the way. And it comes back to like, it's not about being vertically integrated. It's about kind of interdependency between all of us. We all need each other to get the same job done. And hopefully we all live longer and everybody makes money and everybody's happy.
Coming up on The Modern Acre, we're talking making nitrogen on the farm using only air and water with Travis Potter of Green Lightning. The Modern Acre is presented by Corteva Agriscience. Corteva combines industry-leading innovations, high-touch customer engagement, and operational execution to profitably deliver solutions for the world's most pressing agriculture challenges. Corteva generates advantaged market preference through its unique distribution strategy, together with its balanced and globally diverse mix of seed, crop protection, and digital products and services. With some of the most recognized brands in agriculture and a technology pipeline well-positioned to drive growth, the company is committed to maximizing productivity for farmers while working with stakeholders throughout the food system as it fulfills its promise to enrich the lives of those who produce and those who consume, ensuring progress for generations to come. Ty, let's do a little check-in. How's your fantasy squad doing? What's your record right now?
Let me pull it up. Actually, I don't have it on my thing. I think I'm in first place.
Really? That's very surprising.
Why is that surprising? It's like my wife's family league with like my nieces and nephews who are like 10.
Yeah, they can't be at the waiver wire like late at night, midweek, just trying to pick up people off the bench.
Yeah, basically, like what it takes to be in first place is just make sure that the roster is ready to go.
All you have to do is set your lineup.
Yes, but I do have Brock Purdy and George Kittle on my team, which has proven very advantageous because Kittle has been a touchdown machine this year. So having the touchdown passes from Purdy to Kittle is definitely boosted the record.
That's solid.
I'm a Niners maxi, Tim.
I've got a few Niners on the squad. I got Juwan, picked him up as a replacement for Ayuk. That's been good. I'm in a 12-team league, very competitive. Everyone's like every week the waiver wire is going crazy. So I'm in 3rd out of 12, so not too bad. This is the league that has the penalty that if you get last place, you have to have a license plate that says I suck at fantasy football with rainbows all over it. So I just got to make it to the playoffs, Ty. Do not need that license plate.
I feel like this is a situation where you gotta go for playoffs, go to win it, and you won't be in last place, right? Like you can't be trying to like not get last. You got to try to win the thing, and then you'll end up 3rd, like you.
Exactly. That's where I'm at.
Yeah. Well, happy for you. All right, Tim. Excited to get into this conversation. Travis is an ag builder, so it's what we love on this podcast. He founded Tractor Beverage. You may know, a prolific beverage brand that has been in a ton of different food service locations, Chipotle among others, doing organic based beverages. He helped scale that business, found that business, and then pivoted to Green Lightning.
Yeah, during his time as Tractor, he was like really involved in the supply chains of sourcing organic fruits and vegetables from farms, and came across a technology called Green Lightning and just fell in love with it, started talking to the founder more, and ultimately was so compelled by what they were doing, making nitrogen out of air and water, like pretty crazy technology, that he left Tractor to do this full time, partnered with the inventor of this product, and he's really gone all in on it and really like put all the chips in Green Lightning's basket and really focused on this business, which is really cool. Like their expansion story is crazy. He gets into that of like how many states they're in, how many countries they're in. They've only been commercialized for the past couple of years, but essentially what they have is a platform where they have different size systems to create your own nitrogen on farm. So you plug in reverse osmosis water, add it to an electrical source, and you can basically charge that and make nitrogen. It's a really crazy technology, like very, very interesting. Like nitrogen's such a big key to farming operations, and being able to do this decentralized on farm is really interesting. He sent us a small unit to kind of like try it out to start making some products. So we're going to be doing that in the barn this upcoming winter, which will be fun.
Totally. I mean, it's one of these scenarios where it seems too good to be true, and he's going all in on it. You know, it kind of reminds me of Friedberg going all in on Ohalo, right? Like he's going all in on Green Lightning. Travis is going all in on Green Lightning because he believes, hey, this is pretty crazy technology. There's, other folks doing this. Nitricity is another one that comes to mind, Tim, but I think Green Lightning has their unique approach. And, if you can scale this is a massive, massive opportunity. Think about the fertilizer market is massive. So you guys are going to love this one. This is an episode, Tim, where sometimes we got to just let our guests cook, and Travis was cooking a lot of good content in here. So we just sat back and let him cook. And I think you guys are going to love it. So we'll jump in with what's top of mind.
Whew. Feeding 25 billion people instead of 8. That's the main focus.
We're super pumped to talk about how you're thinking about doing that with Green Lightning. But Travis, let's take a step back. Tell us a little bit more about yourself. What ultimately got you involved in ag?
Well, I grew up not too far from you guys in the Southern Sierras, cattle ranch, sheep, whatever we could to try to make some money. And that was a good way to go out of business quickly. When you lease ground and you're relying on making money, and you have a single wide mobile home you're living in, you want to be smarter about the way you do things. So I kind of jumped in, didn't really do the college thing that like most guys would, because every time I'd ask a professor how to make money in ag, they always put me in a silo. And I'm like, no, I want to figure out how to sell the whole thing. And so, instead of selling a lamb for $50 at the sale, I wanted to figure out how to get $15 a pound. So that was kind of the route we went. I did a lot of that. I'll kind of do the fast version. I went across the country shearing sheep to learn how everybody raised animals and learn how they farmed. Everything from, we ran sheep in the Central Valley but I also learned citrus and grapes and a little bit of everything, because if you're doing one, you're probably learning the rest. And then onions in Georgia. We saw different crops all over the country. And then I ended up going to college for meat in Minnesota. Learned how to do everything from head to tail butchering to all the different cuts you could possibly do to making added value stuff. And that was kind of like the aha moment. I was trying to figure out a way to direct market our stuff. And I'm old. So it was in early 2000 when we figured out we needed to go back to California and do organic beef stuff. And so, before that, going to school, the common denominator is chemicals were causing my family members to have different illnesses. And as I was shearing and I was going across country, I saw a lot of those problems on the farm. And so I was like, how do we make farmers profitable and keep it clean? And that was kind of like the gist of getting started. I also have a huge family, and it was the beginning of my having a family. And I was looking at kind of a legacy, like how do I farm, but also how do my kids end up farming and my grandkids? And I think it's going to look different than it is today. I was looking back at my grandpa from Iowa. He would have been happy with 50 bushel corn in 1950. Now, we have guys that are doing 400 bushel corn with water and electricity. So that's kind of stuff like fast forward, like, things can be done differently. And so, but anyways, we did we did organic meat stuff, later on organic dairy. We had all kinds of different added value products. We're always trying to figure out what can we do to add value to the product and then make it on the shelf to be able to sell to people so they have healthier food. And so that was kind of the beginning of all of it. Later on, as we expanded from meat into dairy, eventually into beverage, that was kind of our biggest entree into how can we get organic crops make the farmer more money and then get it into massive chains so that they could actually have a huge impact on the ground backwards. And that was kind of like the beginning of it. Also, if you were going to have clean food, but you had not clean drinks to go with it, and your main profit center was drinks, you're probably not going to be a business very long. So that was kind of the beginning of it. So with Tractor, we expanded heavily. We pushed hard into food service. We didn't really care about the shelf so much. It was not about how many cans we could sell, but it was more about how much can we get through restaurants to make them successful, and then also sell more organic products. But through that whole process, we learned a lot. One thing in everything we did, and this goes into Green Lightning, is that in organics, your NPK is always out of whack. So you're always trying to figure out how to get nitrogen. It's very difficult. You can't just add nitrogen like conventional guys do. And so you do everything you can to try to get it balanced. And that was always a major concern. So we were always doing things like trying to figure out what would be a good, organic version for a fungicide or organic version for a pesticide. What would be cleaner, but still like get rid of those problems. Later on, we realized that most of that came back to lack of nitrogen. And if we got the nitrogen right in the crop, so I was making it was about 2018, 2019. And I was making some cold brew and nitro coffee and nitro cream sodas and like clean, but really fun, and I'm like, why is it I can make ice cream? I can add it to drinks. I can flush nitrogen gas through our products to make them last longer, but I can't put it on the ground. And that was my like scratching my head. I'm taking nitrogen from the air and I'm putting it through this machine. Why can't I put that in the ground? So I asked our agronomist at the time we were working on a biological ag deal with, trying to figure out how to make more organic crops for the future. And I'm like, why can't we just use nitrogen from the air this way? And she's like, well, it's like wind. You're like swirling it around. You have to unlock it. Like you have to figure out a way to get it in the crop. And I was like, there's got to be a way to do that. She's like, well, I met a guy. His name's Joe. And so I met Nitro Joe, we call him, in 2019. And the guy is like crazy smart. Like he did hydrogen engines. He did syngas technologies where he was making diesel engines have zero emissions, like really cool stuff. So kind of the opposite of trying to use energy to make electricity to make a car. He was using the same kind of process, but getting rid of the fumes. But through that whole process, and then he was also a submarine. He was a nuclear submarine guy. So yeah, he's an efficiency expert at best, but nobody's normal if they've been under the water for 5 years. And so that was kind of like as I met him and we started talking, it was a lot of fun trying to see what he was doing. But at the time, he could only make about a gallon a day. And so he talked to me like I was an investor. I'm like, no, I always get investors excited. I'm not an investor guy. Like that's not me. And I said, I want to help you get this out to the world because I think it'd feed the world if it works. But how far along are you? Now he'd been working on it for like 10 years at that point. But he said it was a byproduct of everything else he did. So in the hydrogen engine, nitrogen was an excess product. In the syngas technologies, nitrogen was an excess product. And then he looked at it and he's like, oh, this is the same stuff that's in pretty much all the fertilizer and even meats and toothpaste and suntan lotion. And he's like, wait a minute, nitrogen is like the majority of what, is all around us at all times. And so him being from Florida, not a farm guy, he's like, he was testing it on citrus and other things and it was working. But when I met him, I talked to him and he's like, yeah, try it. See what you think. I'm like, okay. So he sent me 2 gallons and I didn't know he could only do a gallon a day. I just thought, let me try it out. I'm a farmer. So I had some super geek stuff. I was doing geothermal greenhouses in the ground in North Idaho, growing citrus in Idaho and tomatoes and weird stuff at the time of year when you normally couldn't grow it or in a place where you can't grow it. And I was like, you know what? Let me try it. So I bought a bunch of these really crappy tomatoes from the hardware store in August, which is the wrong time to buy tomatoes, as you guys know. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get, they were beat up, all the same variety, but 100 of them. I threw them in the greenhouse. I sprayed his stuff on half of it. The other half died in 2 weeks and his grew like 6 or 8 inches. And I was like, it's actually working. Now, when I asked him, I said, okay, I'm putting it on, but how much do I put on? Is it like a gallon per plant or is it a gallon per acre? And he's like, I don't know. You're the farmer. You figure it out. So fast forward, we went through a lot of different things. We finally partnered up because after a year of like freezing it, cooking it, beating it up and seeing what it did, I was blown away. Now going back to those tomatoes, but it was in October, we had 9.5 bricks tomatoes hanging off of 6 foot tall tomato trees. In August, we put them and they were like 12 inches. So I'd never seen anything grow like that in my life in North Idaho. And I'm like, it worked. Then the stuff that didn't work, it obviously didn't. So being a skeptical farmer, I did the same things what you guys probably would do and waited till spring and put on some new fresh tomatoes. And then I sprayed the opposite. And sure enough, those grew like crazy. And the other ones they did okay, but not great. So that was the beginning of like, wow, we have something that would work in the organic industry, but if it's cost effective, it would change the world. So we dove into it. I asked him if he could make it like way bigger. And he said, no, it doesn't really work like that. I'm like, can't you do like a fire hose and a massive amount of electricity? And it's like, and he said, no, air and water doesn't work the same way. Like you got to do it. It's very delicate. It's got to be efficient. But basically at the end of the day, it's, we're taking water and air and mixing it together. At the end, it's still water. And so I was like, there's got to be a way to make it bigger. So I pushed him hard. We partnered up. He got to a gallon an hour. I'm like, okay, now we're heading somewhere. Well, fast forward today, we have machines that are doing 6,000 gallons a day. And we're doing 350 heads instead of 1 head. And so we kind of thought about it like horsepower, like a V8 versus a 12 valve. Like we know we got to just add more of them. And so that's what we did. We expanded very quickly over this past year. We've been testing it. We did potatoes and corn. That was kind of like the biggest trial we did, where we had farmers that they wanted to prove us wrong, or we did labs that did a lot of acreage and tried it on potatoes, and we beat conventional nitrogen with electricity and water. Now, by itself, we did over 2.5 times as much volume as we did if it was by itself. So obviously the water did something. So we knew that we had to jump on it. We had a 281 bushel corn that was organic. Next, we beat 14 bushel over the not organic version. And we're like, okay, we're on to something. So that was kind of like the beginning of really like trying it on a bigger field application. And now we're in 30 states. We're in the US, Canada. We just expanded into Jamaica, South Africa, Ghana, Austria, Australia, New Zealand. Like we're blowing it up. But what we had to do was we had to prove it out. We had to get it on the farm and figure it out. This year we screwed up a little bit. We thought, being an entrepreneur, I'm sure you guys in the tech space appreciate this. We're like, it works, buy it. And then you get it there and you're like, oh crap, their water sucks. Like their water made my machine catch on fire. How does that even happen? And then they call you, they're like, my barn didn't catch on fire, but the machine is wrecked. And I'm like, oh. So we realized that calcium, hot enough, eventually makes plastic stuff go away. So anyways, we had some fixing to do. So we expanded from doing a gallon a day to doing 150 gallons a day, which was good. And then now we're on 300 farms, and we had some explosions and some crops that didn't work. We also had a lot of crops that did really good. And what we found is if we get the water just right, the pH goes low enough, we don't have problems. The machine stays clean, and we're cranking. So with Green Lightning, we took over here in March in Kentucky. And we picked this area because we wanted to be a day's drive from the majority of the nitrogen used in the country, but also a good labor and a good way to get it, get materials around the world, and then a lot of folks that can help us. So we have our plant here in Kentucky. We're expanding that plant. We went from 1,200 square foot of working space to 65,000 square foot, and now we're looking at buying several acres like 20 acres to do more facilities and kind of expand from there. But we're growing quickly. It's a lot of fun. The biggest thing I want to do, I'm a super independent guy. Like if I don't have to buy anything, I will not buy it. I'm an efficiency guy too. And so why we built it, instead of making a giant machine that we sell product to, guys, we wanted to make it so that the farmer could actually own it, make their own stuff, and then they can grow whatever they want and put as much on it throughout the season. So that was kind of like the basics. So I gave you guys a lot to think about, and now you have questions.
Yeah, but have about 100 questions. There's so much to dig into with your story and what you're up to with Green Lightning. I love the value proposition of selling a unit to farmers where they can make their own inputs on farm and have this kind of distributed model versus kind of traditional ag retailer and how that channel distribution works. But want to go back to your time at Tractor Beverage. You started this really iconic brand in the space. And I think it's really interesting to hear you talk about those times of like you were working with biologists and agronomists and like really like understanding your supply chain. Like Ty and I have had number of different CPG folks on the podcast, and sometimes there's a disconnect where they don't really even know where their produce comes from. So you were like very much involved. Like maybe just talk to us about your approach there of actually like understanding each farm and each commodity that went into your products.
Yeah. So first of all, making something like having the meat or the dairy is the easy part, and then adding stuff to it and actually selling it's another ball game. I once had a guy tell me, he's like, commodity agriculture is a lot easier than what you do. He's like, you have like 16 extra jobs if you want to actually sell it to the end user. And most farmers just hate people. Like they don't even want to deal with humans. They want to feed them. They love them. They just don't want to have to like listen to them. And so we've had retail shops. Our kids have been in the restaurant business. We've sold stuff direct as much as you possibly can. So that was kind of going through that, my heart is be as vertically integrated as possible. But if you want to make a big impact on the world, help the farmers that are growing with you produce as much as what you need for the end user that needs as much of that as possible. And so that's kind of like, then it got into like, I kind of had like a heart posture change of, I'm not supposed to just do this for my own family or my community or even our country, but we can feed a lot more people if we do it super smart. And then coming back to like with Tractor, it was kind of along the same lines as if we could have enough people that needed or the organic crops for the drinks or the organic drinks for the restaurants, then we could have other farmers that'll grow a lot more of that. And so kind of going back to innovation, when I was innovating, I was thinking like sausage. I was thinking like, what ingredients make the very best quality that I could possibly make this taste good? And then how do I make it stable without using chemicals, but instead using physics? So that was kind of the beginning of it. And we did a lot of that. We became, I think, the biggest buyers of lemons in the world, probably the organic lemons. And I think the biggest buyer of organic cane sugar in the world for one customer, and organic tea. Like it didn't take very long, but at the same time, like we weren't focused on selling a 12-ounce bottle of something. We're selling bag in the boxes of stuff to go through a system, or, concentrates that make, where we can save a boatload of the cost. So the end user can make money. So, value proposition is, how does the farmer make more money? How do we create a company that makes money? And the only way it really works is if other people make money along the way. And it comes back to like, it's not about being vertically integrated. It's about kind of interdependency between all of us. We all need each other to get the same job done. And hopefully we all live longer and everybody makes money and everybody's happy. So how do you gap that if you run out of the main ingredient that you're selling? And then somebody ends up going with a crappier product because they can't get enough what you're going. So we were in that hurdle with Chipotle. We're like, okay, we need a lot of citrus, a lot, like probably the most organic citrus on the planet, just for Chipotle. And Chipotle's head of supply chain, he's like, so you have enough to do like $40 million worth of just a couple things? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Why not? Yeah, I'm sure somebody will get it going. And then reality hits. Like, I'm a farmer. Like, how long does it take citrus to grow? And then how long does it take to become certified organic? And then once it's organic, actually get it to work properly. And then processing in a facility that's organic, it became a bigger deal than we expected. But through that, we had white fly come. White fly comes into Florida, and now there's no organic almost in the entire state of Florida. And we're like, where are we going to get, California has some organic citrus, but not the same kind of level. And then, so we're looking globally like, all right, how do we make all these farmers successful along the way? And citrus is just one part of it. We have spices from all over the world. The cool thing about spices, most of them don't really need much chemicals. They're kind of on autopilot. If anything, they're a natural preservative and they protect themselves anyways. It's more like the volatile fruits. And even just having enough of organic tea, for example, like you got to get everybody on board, and then they got to do something that's actually profitable, and you got to make it work. So this is kind of like beyond fair trade and beyond organic. It's really like, how do we gap the beginning customer all the way to the end, and then it's like, well, what can we do for those people that would make the world a better place? And it kind of merged, and that kind of came up in a bigger aha moment when we realized that our machines make nitrogen for like 2 cents on the dollar for what it costs for conventional nitrogen. And it's like a quarter of a penny versus what organic nitrogen would cost through manure. And we're like, okay, now we can actually change the world. And that's why I stepped back from Tractor. And I'm like, you guys, I've got to get this to the entire planet as quick as possible, because we are going to change the world. We no longer need petroleum to make nitrogen. It's a big deal. If we can just use the air and water to make stuff grow that has higher bricks, where we don't even have bug problems and no fungus problems, that means we have less fungicide, less pesticides. Now we're like, what else? How's this stuff work? And then we started mixing it with things. And even the conventional guys, they were mixing with chemicals, and the chemicals are like 3 times more potent than they normally would be. So that means they're using 3 times less. Like ideally you get rid of everything, but if you can take what we already do and skinny it back where farmers make more money and we have less chemicals, that's a winning deal. So that's kind of like the beginning of where we were going, where we're heading. And kind of my thought process as a dad, as a grandpa, just doing what we do here. It's not just about us, right? It's about the next generations and the generations after that. And that's kind of thinking out, 50 to a couple hundred years, what's it going to look like? We've only been doing chemical agriculture for 120, 130 years in this world. Before that, we were either starving to death or we were doing it a different way. The cool thing is now we're with this cool combination between kind of the old world ways of doing things, conventional wisdom, and the next level of technology, kind of like what you guys do. So it's a really fun place to be.
Travis, you're a psycho. This is this is awesome. It's so impressive. I mean, okay, so lot to unpack here. So you clearly from a young age recognized how important kind of vertical integration is, value add is. You help start Tractor Bev and scale that and have this innovative approach to, hey, we're going to skip retail altogether. We're going to go through food service. That seemed like a very critical decision for you guys, and have seen success doing it. And then, you're scaling this behemoth beverage company, driving demand for organic products. And then you feel this pull that you have to go do this other thing, which is just so cool. So, talk us through a little bit more. You, in this role at Tractor, want to pivot to this thing that you're feeling called to do. Like, what were the first steps? And tell us a little bit more about the business and kind of where things are at right now.
Well, business-wise, it's pretty awesome. I've got a huge family, and all but 3 of my younger boys are working in the company. And then I've got, I think, a dozen nieces and nephews that are working in the company. I've got my sister-in-law. Like, we have, my wife has a crazy big family. I have a crazy family, not as big. But we decided to go a different route than corporate typical ways of doing things. We also, like, our exit strategy is we die and it keeps on going. Like, it's a different ballgame. So it's more legacy built. So in that, we do things differently. Like, when we decided to pivot, it wasn't like, let's go hire a bunch of people so we can go raise a bunch of money. It wasn't an optics thing. It was different. It was more, okay, how do we do everything we possibly can to give the keys to the farmer to be successful with this piece of equipment that we make? And let's ask them to not, like, kick us in the nuts when it doesn't work so good. But tell us, like, why it's not working good, and then work through it. So we built it for that. Like, and that's where in the beginning, it was like, it's kind of like selling a refrigerator. Like, you build a refrigerator and you give it to somebody and they keep their stuff cold. People in the 1800s would have loved that. When we decided to do that for nitrogen, it doesn't work the same way. It's not just a hot water heater. Like, it's like a living, breathing thing. It's like water and air, but every time the moon changes, their minerals go up in the water, and we have people calling us all over the country having problems or like weird stuff. And so we're like, oh, we need to deal with all these different problems. So we're actually heavier on service than we are in sales. Like, we don't have to work that hard at sales. It's kind of like shooting fish in a barrel. Like, people that realize what we have, like, they want to buy as much of it as they can, especially the early adopters. And then once their buddies have tried it and it works, then everybody in their neighborhood wants to buy them. Our deal is like, how do we position ourselves in this country to be able to service all the farmers when the moon changes and all of a sudden all the minerals are screwing up their water? And so that was let's fix the water. And then second of all, how do we service the farmer, like, quickly? So we're building out a system now where we have 20 locations throughout the country, where when somebody has a problem, within 24 hours, we have a cousin, a nephew, a guy that's a farmer out fixing that machine real quick to make sure it's good. And then we're combining it with tech, where we have screens, and it'll send us hey, we have a problem. Can you guys get this fixed? Because we're not going to make any nitrogen unless you do it. And so that was kind of like one of the things we thought it would be more of a product, technology, and it's becoming more of like a service. It's agronomist questions. It's how did it work in your crop? And now it's global. Like, how do we do that in Canada? How do we do that in Australia? How do we do that in South Africa? And so it's a little bit of a learning curve. It's different. The common denominator is, though, that if we focus on the farmer and not our own profit line, our profitability, we're significantly more successful long term. There's margin in it, but at the end of the day, like, our focus on the farmer approach is different than anybody else that could possibly be in the space. Everybody else has really focused on them. And if we focus on the farmer, then their kids are doing it and their grandkids are doing it. And we can keep on doing that for a lot of generations. So that's really where we're at today. I think we probably could have gone out of business about 100 times this year, where you're just like, now you guys are in tech stuff. You know how it is. Like, one bad move and you're like, But the cool thing is farmers are, like, truly salt of the earth people. And, which is good and bad. The good part of it is if there's a problem, they're willing to work with you on figuring it out. The bad part is sometimes they don't tell you. They just start tearing apart stuff and fixing it themselves. I'm one of those too. Then you got to go back and fix it later because they went too far. They want to take and do a wheelie with it. They don't want to just drive down the road. So that's all stuff that we're in the thick of working with farmers on.
Travis, can you fill us in a little bit more on kind of how the business is structured? Like you originally met Joe back in the day. He's this mad scientist, has the technology, like you fell in love with it and have kind of developed this business. Like what did the business structuring look like? And obviously like a very CapEx intense business building these machines and these units. Like how have you funded the company to get to the stage to commercialize so rapidly?
Well, that was one of the things that I also felt on my heart that we were not supposed to take a boatload of capital to build this thing. Because as soon as you do that, it basically implodes eventually. So that we went a different route. We decided that we're going to use our own capital. And then the farmers were going to pay a deposit that pays for a big chunk of the manufacturing. And then we would build them on demand. That worked okay. That got us through this year. The reality is when a farmer wants it, they want it in like a week. They don't want to wait 8 to 12 weeks to get it. Because of COVID, people are they're used to waiting. Not anymore. Now they're like, well, I used to do that. And like, I don't want to wait anymore. If I want it, I want it. So that's a little bit kind of the business model. We were able to make the machines, get them out, make capital, reinvest that, and then keep on over and over and over. Now we have inventory, and now we have a huge staff that can service everybody in this country. And so it's probably the most organic type of business you could have ever imagined with not a lot of capital. I mean, compared to any other tech company, where most tech companies are going to go out and raise $250 million. We didn't do that. We use our own capital and our own sweat equity. There's a lot of sleepless days working your butt off to get to the point where we have farmers that are getting it and they're using it and they're happy, or they're calling up pissed off because they're not working and you got to figure out how to fix it. So I think that's part of just business in general. You got to be willing to do all the hard stuff, especially in the first couple of years, a lot yourself. If you hire it without knowing how to train people, you might as well just light them on fire. Like it's not going to work. Like the business won't work at all.
And Travis, you alluded to this before, but it sounds like your plan is just to keep this kind of family business for the foreseeable future. You're not looking for an exit strategy. Is that right?
Yeah. If we put it in somebody else's hands and they buy a big chunk of us, what's the chances that they're going to take care of the farmer at the same level? Probably not so good. I don't think there's a whole lot of people that have the kind of heart and determination that we do to get to this point. I think as an entrepreneur, you're always like all heart, all in. It's all good until it gets a little bit either boring or it didn't work financially. And so this one, I don't think it's ever going to get boring. I've been on calls like this every day from the center of Africa with people that have a 16th of an acre, and there's like thousands of them that are going to be using our stuff, to guys with 2 million acres in the same like 2 hours. And I'm like, we all put our pants on the same way. Some of us have to work 10 times harder to make food, and the other ones, they have a lot, but at the end of the day, there's not a lot left if the commodities aren't there. So in that, like the grind, it's not really that much of a grind. I think anybody that is a farmer or in general works and you don't feel like you're working, but you're having a good time, like why wouldn't you do that for as long as you can? And then if your kids are in it, like today, my oldest son, Travis Jr., and my son-in-law, Ben, our plant manager, they figured out something that Joe and I have been like hitting our head against the wall. We've talked to professionals. We've done all kinds of things, and they figured it out. They were like, they're like, let's just do this and watch it works. And I'm like, it totally works. And that's one of those things in technology is like, sometimes it's just like the person that's actually in, building it or in the field can figure it out quicker than you can. So that's kind of some fun stuff that we've been learning. But if you can have your family working with you and it's enjoyable and it's a true family business and you can make it a couple $1 billion business, why not?
Yeah, it's super cool. Definitely rings home for me working with my two brothers and my dad every day. It's really cool to be a part of a family business and have that kind of camaraderie and that background. Travis, obviously with your model, you're creating nitrogen out of air and water. Like, have you had any conversations with traditional ag retailer? Are they mad at you for coming up with this technology? What does that look like on the ag retail side?
A lot of people say that. They're like, aren't people going to be mad at you? I'm like, I think anything I've ever done, people have been mad at us, but at the same time, they're intrigued. They're like, how did you figure this out? Or what got you to this point where you actually thought this was a good idea? Because this is not a new thing. Lightning making crops green has been happening forever. So a lot of these guys are like, well, they haven't got to the point where they think we've moved their cheese. They just think it's kind of interesting what we're doing. So in general, a lot of guys have called us and said, hey, I want to buy one of these big machines to add to what I'm doing. And so we sell our filling stations for guys like that. Now they have 30,000 acres that they spray. now they can use our stuff and go out and spray instead of something that's a lot more expensive. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic. At the same time, we're still trying to figure it out. Like we don't have everything figured out. We have like 500 research projects going on around the country and the world right now. So like they're just laughing at us, like let's wait till they fail, and then just like everything else, whether it's indoor greenhouses or robotic weed whacking, whatever it is, like they just think it's cute. So we appreciate the fact they think it's cute. We do know that based on what we're seeing, if you're making an extra 2 tons of potatoes with electricity and water, you're going to change the game. And that comes back to what's the value chain look like? I think if somebody gets rid of some chemicals, they get paid more and they have less cost in what they're doing. That's a big business deal. Now, I would say that most of the ag retailers laugh at organic guys. This isn't just for organic guys. It's for everybody.
Travis, as we finish up, this has been so much fun. Love your story. What's your food or ag hot take? Maybe a contrarian opinion you have within the ag space.
Well, I'll give you like my global perspective. I've been on this on the protein kick, trying to figure out, does growing meat slime, is it smarter than raising livestock? I don't think so. At the same time, globally, the population's changing for people that eat different meats than others. I don't think pigs are going to be grown as much as lambs in the future. We live in a world where India is growing; they don't eat pork or very little. Same thing with beef. Like I'm a beef guy. We've raised pigs, done all of it. But as I look at kind of the changing landscape, I think you're going to see a lot more lamb and other interesting critters. Like most people don't think about it, but water buffalo is one of the main milked animals in the world. And that's kind of an interesting thing. Like the best pizza you'll ever have is a water buffalo mozzarella. And I actually bought a water buffalo because I'm like, I gotta know what these things are. But I keep on coming back to globally, we're used to doing things in a box in the US and in Europe because it's just a lot easier. But in the next 20 years, when the population of Africa grows by 33% and India grows by maybe 50%, how does that change our food culture globally? And that's been a kind of a big topic for me. The other one is on the ag side. I think we're 10 years out from conventional organic being the same thing. I don't think there's going to be as much chemicals of everything. There might still be some GMO stuff, but why would you need GMOs if the thing you have that is no longer needed? It kind of gets interesting. And then on the biological side, I think there's a lot of bug in a jug stuff out there that guys, they're like, hey, I want to try this bug in a jug, and they don't like it. A lot of the bug and jug guys mix it with our stuff, and it actually works, and they get pretty fired up about it. So we have some guys that are like never before as our stuff worked as good as it is right now. So those are kind of a couple of takeaways. I mean, I can get into all kinds of like beverage trends and ice cream craziness and things that I think are really fun and interesting. But at the end of the day, we really grow just a couple of things: fat, protein, and sugar, and some micronutrients and vitamins. That's it. And how we do it, it might be different animals, it might be different crops.
Travis, how can listeners get in touch and connect with you and Green Lightning?
The best way is to go online to greenlightning.ag and then send us an email, say, hey, put me on the subscriber list, or I want to buy a machine, or I need to talk to somebody because I'm losing my mind trying to understand what this is.
All right, Tim, what do you think of that episode?
Super cool story, just hearing everything that he did at Tractor, everything that he's doing at Green Lightning. Like, love the Green Lightning approach of kind of decentralized manufacturing for farm inputs. Like we've talked to Myland a few times, where it's kind of like, let's make inputs on farm. So like, that's really interesting to me to kind of take distribution logistics out of the equation to make inputs. And also during his time as Tractor, like their success, I think what a lot was driven on going into food service and not trying to be in retail. I think that was like a really big learning of everyone's trying to fight for shelf space at retail. And they just went a totally different approach and had a really good outcome, just focusing on kind of like, let's do it in bulk and let's go food service and own this piece of the market and not be like, so like we need to be in Rayleigh's or we need to be in Erewhon, like these stores. I thought that was like a really, really interesting path they took that led to their positive outcome.
I totally agree. I think a case study could be written on that alone. So super, super good stuff. Well, hope you guys enjoyed this. Thanks for listening.